Okay, so today we wanted to start off with covering CSS, and we know we originally talked about it at the end of workshop 2. So CSS, you connect it to HTML and just helps you like style stuff, so add color, add fonts, and all of that stuff. But we wanted to go over it more in depth because it really isn't that complicated and there isn't much to say about it, but it is still something that is like a third file entirely in your project, so it is still something worth covering. So again, we went over it, but CSS for cascading style sheets is the graphics and art behind a website. So how we use CSS is that first of all, you just have like some type. So you can either say like button, H1, or you can make your own tag if you need it. So as an example there, you have button and then you have your brackets. And then in between the brackets, that's where you add stuff such as background, where you can set it to be like blue or something. Or you can add the padding, which is like adds like some space around it. So we'll go over what like most of those things mean later. And then at the end, there is also a reference sheet for you guys to look at if you're curious what you can add. And then there's connecting to HTML. So there's just one line you guys have to remember, and it's link rel, and then style sheet is, and then href to whatever CSS file you have. So in this case, it's just link.css. For you guys, most of the time we call it style.css when you're working and you only have one sheet, but it's fine, whatever you guys want to call it. So that's really all it is. Just remember that one line. You can honestly just come back here and copy paste it later. It's like, that's all you have to worry about connecting to HTML. And then there's an important distinction here. And if you guys end up ever watching the online lecture, you're going to realize that I flipped them for like a whole entire 3 minutes. So first of all, there's going to be dot type, and then there's going to be hashtag type. So when you have dot type, it's for something called a class. When you have hashtag type, it's for an ID. So the idea here is that when you put it into HTML, you're gonna have something like, in my case, I just put A, even though it could be like button or whatever. Then you can have an ID to it. So that's gonna be, we're gonna explain it later, but that's mostly for connecting it to JavaScript. But the thing it works for in this case is that if you have ID and then you have something called like testing type, in your CSS you would have hashtag A. Actually, this should be hashtag testing type, but it should be this way. Or it should be, this has to be a dash, so the other thing to note when you're adding IDs and stuff, if you have a space, it's going to call it something entirely different. So in this case, if it was testing space type, it would have both the ID of testing and the ID of type. So in order to make them like link together, you just have to add the dash in between. So in this case, since we're using an ID, use hashtag testing type. So on the other side, if you have class is equal to test, then you would have dot test. And if you don't have anything, I don't think I explained it, but if you don't have the dot or the hashtag, it'll change anything that was like created with it. And we'll show you later, but if I was to just have like up here, when I just had like button, so anything that I create that is like bracket, button, bracket, that will be changed. Whereas if it was dot or hashtag, you'd specifically have to add either the class button or the ID button to it. So it just depends on if you want to change everything or like specific objects. Then finally, when should we be using CSS? So while it is for general styling, there's also something called inline styling, which means you could like style your stuff inside of HTML. So the only time you really want to use CSS is if you're going to make a change across multiple objects or just like general changes. So inline styling, let's say I only want one button to look this specific way, that's fine to use inline styling. But if I wanted to change like 10 buttons or even like 3 buttons, that's normally when I would convert to using CSS. And the way that we do inline styling, you're going to see is going to be basically the same as just saying like style is equal to background blue padding 20, stuff like that. So when we come over here, this is, I'll just kind of look at something like this. So we went over this in the online workshop, but it's going to be stuff like this, where you're just going to have like body, and then in this case, when we say body before, what that means is that, so you have the main body, and then this is going to just go on top of it. So kind of like when you do art, you could do stuff in layers. That's kind of like how like the before and stuff works. And then as you can see here, you have hashtag image track. So when you look at your index.html, you have the ID of image track. And then the other one to note for that is that this image track with the caret into .image. So what this is doing is that when you notice the index.html, you have like this container, because it's a div, with the ID of image track. And then inside of it is a bunch of images. So what this is doing is that it's taking any of the images that's inside of image track. That's what that little like caret's doing.
This is accessing the basically the caret just allows it just tells the code, the CSS, to access that image from the parent, and the parent comes from image track. That's how it's doing. And did you want me to go over And going back to linking the CSS and JavaScript, we just have the basic headers, and these are just like, you can always just copy and paste them and just change the name of them. So it's this one for CSS, and here at the bottom it's for JavaScript.
And we'll go over JavaScript in a moment.
Oh, I won't right now.
Or you can go over it.
Because you already finished the CSS.
Let's go over the slides.
Slides. Okay. Let's go over the slides first.
And then, like we said, there's the other thing that you have to connect, which is JavaScript to HTML.
So as you saw in the example, you just use the one line, and you can put this like anywhere in your body, and this will just connect your JavaScript to HTML, so you can actually like create the functions for HTML buttons and stuff. And this is an example here. So like creating ID. This is an example of creating a specific object with an ID, and this is for the different types of HTML, of how you can access the HTML. So there's the ID and class, and there's also the type. So we have get element by ID, and that's when you create something with an ID, like what we shown here. Yeah. So this is for accessing stuff with like ID equals something something, and there's also another one with the class, like class equals image. That's how you can access it. So this is my class name, and this is also the tag name too.
Yeah, and then this is just like when we talked about like these like get element by ID, get element by class name, then get element by tag name. This is just an example going over one of them, which is going to be ID name. But then just know that you basically do the same thing for the other two. So this is, you just use document.getElement by ID, and then inside is going to be the ID type. And then, so this is going to do is that you just kind of like have an example here where it's like if you have the ID box, and then you let so this is going to be in JavaScript at the bottom. So if you let box equal to document.getElement by ID box, it's just going to like take anything in the file that had the ID of box and put it into this as an array. So if you remember the array or list, it's just gonna be the one in it's gonna be the one in like these square brackets, and then it just like starts from like 0 and then counting onwards. And then there's like some other useful functions that you'll normally add onto it. So once you already have this like let box or something, you could just do like this like object, or in your case you'd call it box if we're still continuing the example from before. Dot class list contains class. So notice how like we got the ID for box, but if we also wanted to like break it down further to something that has like the ID of box and the class of something like class, then that's how you would break it down. So it's like even though things have the same ID, you can also add different classes to them. And then there's something called like the parent and the child. So what we mean behind this is that when you look back here, so you see how like the container contains images in it? So we would call the container the parent of anything that's in it. So all the images are considered children of that main container. And then in the same way, you see how like the body wraps the container and the images. So therefore, the container is also is now an image of the body. So that's how you could do something such as first element child. That just gets the first child of it. And then there's the dot matches. So dot matches would just let you basically check if the like let's say like the parent is matching like some certain like tag or something. And then this is the more important one. There's something called an event listener. So what this does is that it can like wait for you to press a button or like wait for you to like click on the screen or something. And then that's when your JavaScript functions will actually start running. So like as an example, let's say when I click a button, I want it to do some like addition math or something. That's when you would use an event listener. Just anything that you want to have like an action in your HTML, and you want your JavaScript function to run when that action happens. So the general idea is use object.add event listener. Then there's the listening type, and then you just have some function at the end of it. For all the listening types, you could just go to this link over here. So it basically just has everything that you need, such as like when a form of an element has changed, when something was clicked on, and like just like everything. So, and then like I said, add function, we can show you an example of it, but like before we talked about how you can make like a function that like kind of like wraps your code. So like all of your solutions that you guys wrote, let's say you put that into a function, and then like let's say if I had this listening type to be click, every time I clicked on a button, it would like run that solution you guys made. Then, like I said, there's an example of the code here. So if I have like a button that had an element through the ID button, my button. So, and then here's my function handle click, where you have an alert. And so we know we talked to you guys about console.log before and how it prints to your terminal. So it's like mainly for the developer side. You also have something called an alert, which is just a pop-up on the screen. And then every time you click the button, it would run this function handle click here, which would just alert that you click the button. And you will be doing an example of this in the labs that we created for you. There are new labs, so we'll have you guys like pull that later from GitHub. Then there's like this other way to await, which is it's gonna be like window.type is equal to some kind of event. Normally you could just write E and that's fine. And then that is like equal to caret to function of events. So you could just have some function in there, and then let's say you need to do something with an E, you could just put the E in there as well. So as an example here, window.onMouseDown is equal to E, which runs some function called onHandleDown, which takes in the parameter E. So here's like all the types for this. Again, there's another reference link for just like anything you need, but we think these are the more important ones, which is like on mouse touch, on key touch, on mouse down, on touch down, on key down. So that's normally like when you press something, or if you use your finger to like push a button, right, on like a phone. Then there's on mouse touch key up. So that's when you depress your finger, the key, the mouse click. Then there's move, which is just like whenever you're attempting to scroll. So if I was just like to use something to scroll over, that's when you use that. Then there's on click, which is like whenever you click something. And then there's on submit, which is normally meant for forms, which I know some of you guys might want to do. So if you end up having a form, you could just use on submit as well. And again, there should just be like a whole entire list here of just like anything that you'll need it for. It's generally like, yeah. Everything's just like normally here, and you guys can look it up as well if you need something specific. So that's mostly about all that we had for the slides. I know we had some examples as well. Did you cover it already? Because you had some stuff here. Did you cover this?
JS.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually just wrote like a pretty simple JavaScript to connect to this. Not really simple, but most of these are just like using the event listeners on handle up, on handle on down, handle on up. So essentially, this is kind of, I think it's just better to show. So essentially, this is just grabbing, like, if I click the mouse down and drag across the screen, it will grab the images and move them with it. So for this, I actually just use on handle down, where when it clicks, it gets the client's X position. And I don't really want to go into details, but you can look at it right here, where it just tracks the position of the mouse and how far you dragged it, and calculate the percent of how much the track should move. So this actually gets like the images to show. As you can see, the images aren't cropped properly, but if you move them, it actually scales. It moves the cards with them. So it's like it creates an illusion kind of. And down here is just the math and logic for it. You can look over it yourself if you want later. But this is essentially just moving the percentage according to how much you move your mouse on mouse down, on handle on down. Yes. And these are the event listeners I use, which on mouse down are for PC or desktops, and on touch is for like mobiles. And what else do you want to cover actually? Do you have any labs? Do you have
Yeah.
labs? Right?
And then we also did have labs for you guys. So again, we're gonna have you guys pull it, but there's just 2 labs for this, which is just like connecting stuff. And then I know for you, those of you guys that didn't attend the online workshops, you guys probably didn't know, but we also created some like logic puzzles for you guys to look at for like JavaScript and HTML from before. So logic puzzles is mostly just like thinking about what will happen, or just thinking about if there's errors, or just like generally like what the output is. And then the spot errors, which is just like we made some code, but we intentionally put some errors that will not let it run properly, and just like can you identify them? I think that's about all. Just gonna stop the recording.